Hey everybody, my name's Tyler Perry. I'm a project manager here at EarthWorks, and I wanted to go through a project that we recently completed for a customer here in Dallas, Texas. We turned an erosion area into some premium backyards for these customers. This area to start with was an erosion area. Due to declining landscape and sunlight issues and things that were really competing against the layout, they wanted to turn this into something that they could really provide to their residents and turn it into a nice space. The first step of this project was bringing in our design team. We created 3D rendering concept for them to review so they can kind of get a finished vision of what everything would look like as soon as we were done. One of my favorite parts of this project is how close the renderings turned out to the actual design. We really tried to keep it as close as possible so that they really got what the design looked like in the beginning. The first step of this project, what we had to do was bring down a few trees that were in close proximity to the street along with power lines. We had to use guide wires to bring down the limbs very strategically so that they did not hit the power lines or hit any cars that were passing by. This was something that we had to take a great deal of safety in, that way that we could make sure that nobody was hurt at the end of the process. I was honestly worried a little bit about these trees. They were pretty close to those electric lines, and I was worried that we weren't going to be able to get them down safely, but our crews really knocked that one out of the park for sure. Removing those trees really opened up that space a lot. Gave it a lot of sunlight. It was real dark and shaded beforehand. After the trees were removed, we had to come up with a new way to redesign the concrete. With the old layout, it didn't make sense on how the yards would lay out, so we had to saw cut along where the sidewalks met the foundation and then use our skid steers and jackhammers to remove all the old concrete and start forming up to make the new patios run from the existing city sidewalk up to each front door. The weather kind of became a challenge unexpectedly. We saw a lot amount of rain during this time, and every time we would have it scheduled to pour the new concrete, it would decide to rain. And this would disturb the curing process, which then in turn would ruin the concrete. Once the concrete was poured and everything was cured correctly, what we did was we brought in our stump grinders to get rid of the stumps and some of the root systems that were in way of where we were going to eventually put the backyards. We didn't want this to cause any future problems after the turf was installed, so we really wanted to make sure to get as much as possible and get everything out during this process. That irrigation work was really tough on those guys. They had to dig through a lot of root systems to get the new lateral lines in there. Also be careful in some of these light posts that were there, but they definitely got it done and quicker than I thought they would. Once the stumps were removed, what we did was we started the prep work for the retaining wall. What we do here is we will excavate and drop down 3 inches below where we want to. It's roughly about half of a block. We'll install 3 to 4 inches of fine flex base and we'll compact that. This allows us to get a perfectly flat space for this retaining wall. The first layer is always the most important because once that first layer is flat and level, the rest of the wall really just kind of falls into place. At the same time that the crew was working on the retaining wall, we also had an irrigation team out there reconfiguring the design of the irrigation system. Previously, it had all been drip, and we needed to make sure that each yard had 3 or 4 spray heads to help dilute and wash out some of the pet waste. So we had to install new valves, new lateral lines, new head. It was really just a couple of new zones that had to be completely redesigned. Once the retaining wall was complete and once the irrigation was complete, we were able to start the process of the synthetic turf. Normal turf installs will excavate 3 inches of organic material, and we will replace it with either decomposed granite or fine flex base and compact that down. You really want to make sure everything's perfectly flat, has proper drainage, slope and everything. This was a little bit different project. What we needed to do was actually bring the level up about a foot or so to level everything out rather than dig down and make everything flat. So we started with dropping in 3 inches of flex base, compacting that, 3 more inches, compacting that. We really wanted to make sure that everything was compacted evenly, so we did it in stages rather than just dump everything all in at once and try to compact the full level. One thing I didn't think that the guys would do was use the wheelbarrow to get the base up into the backyards. When I was thinking the project out, I thought they would use our mini skid steer to dump the base up and over the wall and just spread it out there, but they were using ramps and wheelbarrows the entire time. In the middle of this process, we did have to lay our fence post in. This is to kind of put everything in order from start to finish. That way we didn't have to go back and tear up turf to put in the fencing and everything. So there are 2 types of turf. There's poly and there's nylon. Poly is used a lot in open spaces on the north sides of buildings, things that you don't get real big reflections off of windows or anything of that. Nylon can handle those courtyards that get high reflection off the windows, especially in apartment complexes. So we noticed in the beginning that we had some reflection, but after those trees were removed, we noticed that there was a lot more than we anticipated. So ultimately we had to change over to nylon instead of the poly. For cutting out the turf, our guys just used box blades, and we had to follow along every contour of each sidewalk, each wall, and everything, just make sure everything fit right into place. We didn't want there to be any seams or anything that kind of left gaps. So our guys are very careful and take their time and meticulously cut everything to make sure that everything fits into place, almost like a puzzle. As our guys were making the cuts, they were also at the same time getting the turf secured to the base. With that, they use the 5 or 6 inch staples. You can also use 5 or 6 inch nails for this process. Once this turf is all put in place and it's all secured to the ground and everything, we will use, what we used on this one is pet infill, and it has enzymes in there to help neutralize the smell of pet waste. So sometimes in more public areas and foot traffic areas, you can use silica sand. This one, like I said, we used a canine pet neutralizer. So at this point in the project, one thing we ran into is the customer didn't want to extend the yard all the way down the side of the building that you can see under the address. So we cut the yard off and then just created a nice landscape bed. We did have to reconfigure the landscape irrigation for this part because it would not match the same that we needed for the backyards. So that was a quick and easy change order that we had to do to make sure that everything was going to get watered sufficiently. At this point in the project, it wasn't that hot, but now that we're working our way into the heat, these things would have struggled if the coverage wasn't that great. I like these types of projects, honestly. They really, I like when you have to bring different team members in to really get the design done, you know, bringing in Jordan to do the design and bringing in our hardscapes team and our landscape team and our irrigation team to make sure everything really flows and kind of works properly. And, you know, even the tree work too. So getting those diverse projects that really get to, you know, showcase our abilities are kind of my favorite. You know, this one just ended up being exactly how we thought it would lay out. So it really, really just turned out to be a great project. It's projects like these that showcase how EarthWorks can deliver across multiple divisions: design, irrigation, hardscapes, and landscape, all of which rooted in our commitment to quality. If you have a design idea and you'd like us to take a look, please give us a call, and thanks for watching.